The first time I saw her, I knew she would be trouble. Not because she looked dangerous, mind you. Quite the opposite. Lieutenant Kira Vale sat in the back row of the Interstellar Military Academy's Advanced Combat Theory class, arms crossed, looking thoroughly bored while Professor Thorne droned on about Krillian battle formations. She had this way of staring at nothing in particular that made you wonder if she was asleep with her eyes open. I am Vex'thar of the Zorvanian Empire, third son of the High Commander, decorated veteran of 17 campaigns, and generally considered one of the most brilliant tactical minds of my generation. At least, that is what everyone kept telling me. My scales shimmered purple and gold under the lecture hall lights, a genetic marker of my noble bloodline that never failed to draw admiring glances from the other cadets. Humans, though. Humans barely noticed. And this human, this Lieutenant Vale, seemed to notice even less than most. The Krillians employ a three-tiered assault pattern, Professor Thorne was saying, his multiple eye stalks waving enthusiastically at the holographic display. First wave establishes perimeter control, second wave disrupts communications, and third wave, a snore. An actual audible snore came from the back row. Every head in the lecture hall turned. Lieutenant Vale jerked awake, blinked twice, and looked around with the confused expression of someone who had just been teleported into the room without warning. "Something boring you, Lieutenant?" Professor Thorne asked, his voice dripping with disapproval. "No, sir," she replied, sitting up straighter. "Just resting my eyes, sir." "Perhaps you can tell the class how you would counter a Krillian three-tier assault, then, since you find the material so unstimulating?" She yawned. Actually yawned. Right in the middle of answering. "Sorry, sir. You would disrupt their command structure between Wave 1 and Wave 2 using asymmetric guerrilla tactics. Target their supply lines before they can consolidate the perimeter. Standard stuff." Thorne's eye stalks quivered with irritation. "Standard? On Earth, yeah. We have a saying. If your enemy has a plan, break their ability to execute it before they start. Worked pretty well for us during the Unification Wars." I could not help myself. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a full, condescending laugh that echoed through the lecture hall. "Something amusing, Cadet Vex'thar?" Thorne asked, turning his attention to me. "Forgive me, Professor," I said, standing with practiced grace. My height advantage over most species in the room was not accidental. I made sure everyone could see me. But the lieutenant seems to misunderstand the complexity of interstellar warfare. What works on a primitive world against primitive opponents hardly translates to modern combat scenarios. The Krillians are a Tier 3 civilization with quantum-entangled communication networks. You cannot simply disrupt their command structure with guerrilla tactics. Vale looked at me then. Really looked at me. Her eyes were this odd shade of green that seemed to shift in the light, and there was something in them that made my scales prickle uncomfortably. "Primitive?" she asked quietly. "No offense intended," I said, though offense was absolutely intended. But Earth only achieved spaceflight 2 centuries ago. The Krillians have been waging war across the stars for millennia. Your perspective is limited." "Limited?" She repeated the word like she was tasting it, deciding whether it was bitter or sweet. "Right." The other cadets were watching now with the kind of attention that came from sensing blood in the water. Everyone knew about the humans, how they had somehow talked their way into the Galactic Council despite having no significant military victories to speak of, how they had been given seats at academies and positions in fleets based on what many considered political maneuvering rather than actual merit. And here was one of them, sleeping through lectures and offering simplistic solutions to complex problems. Perhaps, I continued, warming to my subject, the lieutenant would benefit from additional study sessions. I would be happy to tutor her on the finer points of xenomilitary theory. Pro bono, of course. Several cadets snickered. Vale's expression did not change. "That is very generous of you, Cadet Vex'thar," Professor Thorne said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. "However, let us return to the lesson. Lieutenant Vale, please pay attention. You too may find yourself facing Krillian forces someday, and I doubt your Earth tactics will save you." The lecture continued. I sat back down, satisfied that I had put the human in her place. Humans needed to understand the hierarchy. They were newcomers, barely worthy of note in the grand scheme of galactic civilization. Better they learn humility now than die ignorant in some future conflict. But Vale, she just stared at me. Not with anger, not with embarrassment, with something else entirely. Calculation, maybe. Like she was solving an equation in her head, and I was one of the variables. It made my scales itch. After class, I was surrounded by my usual entourage. Crix, a Mantarian with 4 arms, and an unfortunate habit of agreeing with everything I said. Sella, a Phaedron whose telepathic abilities were supposedly quite advanced, though she never seemed to use them for anything interesting. And Torque, a massive Brutarian who served primarily as muscle and occasionally as furniture when we needed extra seating. "That was brilliant," Crix said, his mandibles clicking excitedly. "Did you see her face? Absolutely mortified." "She did not look mortified," Sella observed quietly. "She looked amused?" "Amused?" I scoffed. "Impossible. I thoroughly dismantled her argument. She has nothing to be amused about." "Maybe she thinks you are funny," Torque rumbled. "Like what do humans call it? A clown?" "I am not a clown," I said sharply. "I am the 3rd son of the High Commander. 17 campaigns. Brilliant tactical mind, yes, we know," Crix interrupted. "But perhaps we should be careful with the human. I have heard stories." "What stories?" I asked, though I was not particularly interested. Stories about humans were inevitably boring. Tales of their stubbornness, their refusal to acknowledge superior species, their odd attachment to pets and pack bonding. Nothing impressive. Just stories, Crix said vaguely, about what happens when you underestimate them. "Impossible to underestimate what has never been properly estimated to begin with," I replied. "Besides, what can she do? File a complaint? Cry about discrimination? The Academy judges on merit, and she has demonstrated very little of that." As if summoned by my words, Lieutenant Vale walked past our group. She did not look at us, did not acknowledge us at all. Just walked by with her hands in her pockets, humming something under her breath. "Excuse me, Lieutenant," I called out. "A word, if you please." She stopped, turned, raised an eyebrow. "Yes?" "I wanted to apologize if my comments in class seemed harsh," I said, not meaning a word of it. "I simply believe in maintaining high academic standards. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal," she repeated. "Got it. Perhaps you would be interested in that tutoring session after all. I truly am quite knowledgeable about xenomilitary tactics. I could help you avoid future embarrassment." The corner of her mouth twitched. "That is incredibly kind of you, Cadet Vex'thar. But I think I will manage." "Are you certain? The coursework only gets more difficult, and Professor Thorne has been known to fail students who cannot keep up." "I will take my chances." "Your pride may be your downfall, Lieutenant." "Maybe." She smiled then, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret, a good secret. Or maybe pride is going to be someone else's problem entirely. See you next class, cadet. She walked away before I could respond. I do not like her, I announced to my entourage. She does not seem to like you either, Sella said. Good. Mutual dislike is honest. We understand where we stand. Except, I did not understand where we stood. Not really, because that smile lingered in my mind like an itch I could not scratch. The next class session was a practical exercise. Professor Thorne had set up a simulation room, a massive holographic arena where we would run combat scenarios against AI opponents. Teams of 4, randomly selected, would face increasingly difficult challenges, while the rest of the class observed and critiqued. Naturally, I was placed on a team with Lieutenant Vale. Along with us were Pix, a small, nervous Quillarian who kept apologizing for existing, and Drav, a Saurian heavy weapons specialist who communicated primarily through grunts. This should be interesting, I said as we entered the simulation room. Lieutenant Vale, I assume you will follow my lead. I have run these scenarios dozens of times. Sure, she said, checking her holographic rifle. You lead. Excellent. Pix, you will handle reconnaissance. Drav, suppression fire. Lieutenant, you will provide covering support while I coordinate the assault. Simple enough? Crystal clear, Vale said. The simulation began. We materialized in a ruined cityscape, buildings crumbling around us, smoke obscuring visibility. According to the scenario parameters, we were defending a strategic position against waves of enemy forces. Pix, scout the perimeter. Drav, take position on that ridge. Lieutenant, stay close and watch for flanking maneuvers, I commanded, moving to a tactical vantage point. Everyone moved to their positions. The first wave of enemies appeared, digital constructs that looked and fought like Krillian shock troops. Engaging, I announced, firing controlled bursts at the advancing forces. Drav, suppress that left corridor. Pix, any contacts on the right? No, sir, Pix squeaked. All clear. The first wave fell easily. Too easily. Something was wrong. Reload and prepare for Wave 2, I ordered. Stay alert. Wave 2 came from 3 directions simultaneously. Clever programming. But I was ready. Drav, redirect fire to the center. Pix, fall back to secondary position. Lieutenant? I turned to give Vale her orders and found her gone. Where is the lieutenant? I demanded. I do not know, Pix said, his antennae quivering with fear. She was here a moment ago. Unbelievable. She abandoned her position. We will file a report after. An explosion rocked the simulation. One of the enemy's spawn points erupted in flames, then another, then a third. What is happening? I shouted over the comms. Hey, Vex'thar! Vale's voice crackled through the communication channel. Remember that thing I said about disrupting enemy command structures? Where are you? Behind enemy lines. Found their tactical node. Turns out simulated Krillians use the same vulnerability protocols as real ones. Funny how that works. Another explosion. The enemy forces, suddenly without coordination, began firing randomly, hitting each other as often as they hit nothing at all. You broke the simulation, I said. No, I won the simulation, she corrected. Big difference. You might want to mop up the stragglers while they are confused. Or I can do it. Either way works for me. The remaining enemies fell apart without their command structure. The simulation ended with a victory screen displaying our team's performance metrics. Time to completion: 4 minutes, 17 seconds. A new Academy record. We exited the simulation room to find the entire class staring at us. Professor Thorne's eye stalks were fully extended, a sign of extreme surprise. That was, he began, then stopped, started again. That was unorthodox, but effective, Vale said cheerfully. Asymmetric guerrilla tactics, like I said in the last class. You destroyed the command node before the scenario intended for you to even know it existed, Thorne said. Yeah, well, I have been running similar sims since I was 8. You learn the patterns after a while. Krillians love their centralized command. Take it out. They fold. The professor looked at me. Cadet Vex'thar, you were team leader. Why did you allow Lieutenant Vale to leave her assigned position? Because I did not know she had left until it was too late. Because I had been so focused on my perfect tactical plan that I had not noticed one of my team members vanishing into the digital cityscape like smoke. Because, apparently, I was an idiot. It was a calculated risk, I said finally. I believed the lieutenant's skills would be better utilized in an offensive capacity. Liar, Sella whispered, quiet enough that only I could hear. Interesting, Thorne said slowly. Well, regardless of how it happened, that was the fastest completion time this scenario has ever seen. Congratulations, team. Dismissed. As we left the simulation room, I grabbed Vale's arm. We need to talk. Do we? She did not pull away, just looked at my hand on her arm with mild curiosity. You made me look like a fool. No, you made yourself look like a fool. I just won us the simulation. By ignoring my orders, by breaking protocol, by doing exactly what I said I would do in the first class? She smiled that secret smile again. You know what your problem is, Vex'thar? I am certain you are going to tell me. You think being smart means everyone else is stupid. It does not. It just means you are smart. And sometimes, smart people miss obvious things because they are too busy being smart. That makes no sense. Think about it. You will figure it out eventually. Or you will not. Either way, I need lunch. That simulation made me hungry. She walked away, leaving me standing in the corridor, my hand still raised where I had grabbed her arm. Crix appeared beside me. So, how did the leadership go? Shut up. Just asking. But the worst part, the absolutely worst part, was that she was right. I had been so confident in my approach, so certain that my experience and knowledge made me the natural leader, that I had not bothered to actually assess what my team members were capable of doing. I had treated Vale like a liability, and she had turned out to be the most capable fighter in the room. My pride, as she had suggested, was becoming a problem. But I was not about to admit that to anyone, especially not to a human who had been in space for barely 2 centuries and thought she could lecture me on military tactics. This was not over, not by a long shot. If Lieutenant Kira Vale wanted to challenge me, then she would learn what it meant to face a Zorvanian of noble birth and distinguished record. I would make her regret underestimating me. The irony of that thought did not occur to me until much later. The vendetta started small. I began questioning her answers in class. Publicly. Politely, of course, but with just enough condescension to make my point clear. When she suggested alternative formations during tactical planning sessions, I would meticulously explain why traditional methods were superior. When Professor Thorne praised her unconventional thinking, I would offer gentle reminders about the importance of established doctrine. Lieutenant Vale, for her part, seemed completely unbothered. This bothered me immensely. You are obsessing, Sella said one evening, as we studied in the Academy library. It is not healthy. I am not obsessing. I am simply ensuring that academic standards are maintained. You have challenged her 17 times in the past 3 days. I counted. She is wrong 17 times, I insisted, though even I knew that was not entirely accurate. Vale had been wrong perhaps twice. The other 15 times, she had simply approached problems differently than I would have, and her methods had worked. This was unacceptable. "Why does this human bother you so much?" Sella asked, her crystalline features reflecting the library lights in strange patterns. "There are other students who perform well. You do not harass them." "I do not harass anyone. I engage in spirited academic debate." You follow her around campus, looking for opportunities to prove she is wrong. That is called dedication to excellence. Sella sighed, a sound like wind through glass chimes. "You know what I think?" "I did not ask what you think." "I think she scares you. Not because she is dangerous, but because she makes you question whether your 17 campaigns and noble bloodline actually mean as much as you believe they do." I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it, because Sella, despite her usual quiet demeanor, had a talent for cutting straight to uncomfortable truths. "That is ridiculous," I said finally. "Is it? When was the last time someone challenged you without fear? When did anyone last tell you that you might be wrong?" "People tell me I am wrong all the time." "No, they suggest alternatives politely, and then defer to your judgment. Lieutenant Vale does not defer. She just does what she thinks is right, and lets the results speak for themselves. That must be terrifying for someone who built their entire identity on being the smartest person in the room." "I am not having this conversation," I said, gathering my study materials. "Running away is also a choice," Sella called after me. I ignored her, mostly because she was right, and I hated that she was right. The breaking point came during Admiral Korvax's class on advanced strategic planning. The old Velkarian war hero had served in more conflicts than most species had names for, and his lectures were legendary. Not because they were interesting, but because they were brutal. He would present impossible scenarios and demand immediate solutions, then systematically destroy every answer offered until students questioned their life choices. Today's scenario involved a deep space engagement against a numerically superior force with limited resources and no reinforcements available. "Suggestions?" Korvax growled, his scarred face twisting into what might have been a smile or a snarl. "Hard to tell with Velkarians." I raised my hand immediately. "We establish a defensive perimeter using the asteroid field for cover. Force them to engage in close quarters where their numbers advantage is reduced, then execute a fighting retreat to the nebula, where their sensors will be compromised." "Adequate," Korvax said, which from him was high praise. "Cautious, but adequate. You preserve your forces, but accomplish nothing strategic." "Anyone else?" Vale raised her hand. "Lieutenant?" "We lose," she said simply. The classroom went silent. "You did not tell Admiral Korvax that you would lose. That was not how this worked." "Explain," Korvax said, leaning forward with interest. "The scenario is unwinnable as presented. We are outnumbered 5-1, outgunned, no support, no resupply. Any defensive action just delays the inevitable. Any offensive action is suicide. So we lose the battle. Then what do you propose?" "We make them lose the war." Korvax's expression shifted, definitely a smile this time. "Continue." "Before they destroy us, we transmit everything we know about their fleet composition, movements, and tactical patterns to our nearest command. We make our sacrifice worth something. Then we do not run, we do not hide. We charge straight at their flagship." "Suicide," I interjected, "wasteful and pointless." "No," Vale continued, ignoring me. "Instructive. They expect us to run because that is the logical move. When we do not, when we attack with suicidal aggression, we force them to respond. We study how they respond. Every maneuver they make, every defensive formation they adopt, we record and transmit in real time. By the time they destroy us, our command knows exactly how they fight when surprised. That information wins the next 10 battles. The classroom was absolutely quiet. The crew dies, I said. Everyone on those ships dies for information we might obtain other ways. Yes, they die, Vale agreed. But in this scenario, they were dying anyway. At least this way, they die accomplishing something meaningful. At least this way, their sacrifice has purpose beyond buying a few extra hours of running scared through empty space. That is monstrous, I said. You would throw away lives like they matter? Vale turned to face me directly. Those lives already matter, Vex'thar. They matter enough to be honored with a death that means something rather than a death that just prolongs inevitability. You want to hide in asteroid fields and run to nebulas because it feels safer. It feels like you are doing something, but all you are doing is choosing how you die, not whether you die. I am choosing to make the dying count. Enough, Korvax said. But he was grinning now, a frightening expression on his battle-scarred face. Lieutenant Vale demonstrates something you all should learn. Sometimes the bravest tactical decision is accepting that you cannot win and figuring out how to lose productively. Cadet Vex'thar, your solution saves more lives in the immediate term, but accomplishes nothing strategic. Lieutenant Vale's solution saves 0 lives, but potentially prevents thousands of future casualties by providing actionable intelligence. In war, these are the choices you face. Neither is wrong, neither is right. Both are necessary, depending on context. I felt my scales flush dark purple with humiliation. She had done it again. Made me look like someone who could not see beyond the obvious, who valued appearance over substance. However, Korvax continued, this raises an interesting question. What happens when 2 commanders with such different philosophies must work together? Class dismissed, except you 2. Cadet Vex'thar, Lieutenant Vale, remain. The other students filed out, several casting sympathetic glances my way. Even Crix looked worried. When the room was empty except for the 3 of us, Korvax leaned back in his chair. You 2 have a problem. I have no problem with the lieutenant, I said stiffly. Liar, Korvax said cheerfully. You hate her because she is good and refuses to acknowledge that you are better. She annoys you because she does not play the social games you excel at. Am I close? Admiral, Quiet. Lieutenant, how do you feel about our purple friend here? Vale shrugged. He is fine. Smart. Accomplished. Good tactical mind. Just needs to stop acting like everyone else is stupid. So, you do not hate him? Hate? No. Why would I? He has not done anything worth hating. This somehow made me angrier than if she had despised me. At least hatred would mean I had made an impact. Indifference meant I was beneath notice. Here is what is going to happen, Korvax said. Tomorrow, you 2 will participate in the final examination for this course. A live combat exercise against trained opponents in a real-world scenario. Not simulations. Actual opponents who will actively try to defeat you. Sir, the final examination is not for another 2 months, I protested. It is for you 2. Consider it a special opportunity to demonstrate your abilities. And if we refuse? Vale asked. Then you both fail my course and are expelled from the academy. Your choice. That is blackmail, I said. That is education, Korvax corrected. You need to learn to work together despite your differences. She needs to learn that sometimes caution is not cowardice. You need to learn that sometimes sacrifice is not waste. And you both need to stop being insufferable in my classroom." "I am not insufferable," I began. "Yes, you are," Vale and Korvax said simultaneously. "The exercise begins at dawn tomorrow. You will be provided with a squad of 8 cadets, basic equipment, and a mission briefing. Your opposition will consist of academy instructors and advanced students. They will not go easy on you. I suggest you spend tonight planning. Dismissed." We left the classroom in silence. Once in the corridor, Vale turned to me. "Coffee?" "Excuse me?" "Coffee. That brown liquid humans drink. We should probably plan this operation, and I think better with caffeine. There is a decent place near the barracks." "I do not drink coffee. It is toxic to Zorvanians." "Right, sorry. They have other stuff. Come on, we need to not fail this." Against my better judgment, I followed her to a small cafe tucked between the training facilities. She ordered something called a cappuccino. I ordered a mineral supplement that tasted like disappointment. "So," she said, sitting across from me, "let us address the giant purple reptilian in the room. You think I am arrogant?" "I think you are dismissive of established practice," I corrected. "Same thing, different words. And you are probably right. I do dismiss established practice sometimes. But you know why? Because you believe you know better? Because established practice usually means doing things the way they have always been done, even when circumstances change. The galaxy is not static, Vex'thar. New species emerge, new technologies develop, new threats appear. If we just keep doing what worked 1,000 years ago, eventually we are going to face something that does not care about our traditions. And you think humanity's 2 centuries of space travel gives you insight into this? No. I think humanity's 2 centuries of space travel means we do not have traditions yet. We cannot fall back on established practice because we do not have any. So we improvise. We adapt. We figure things out as we go. Sometimes we are wrong. Often we are wrong. But sometimes we stumble onto approaches that work better than what everyone else has been doing. I sipped my mineral supplement. It still tasted terrible. You know what bothers me most about you? My winning personality. You do not care what anyone thinks. You just do what you believe is right and ignore criticism. Not true. I care what people think. I just do not let it stop me from trying things. Big difference. And what do you think of me? She took a long drink of her coffee, considering. Honestly, I think you are talented, educated, and terrified. Terrified? Of what? Of being ordinary. Your whole identity is built on being exceptional. 3rd son of a high commander, 17 campaigns, brilliant tactical mind. Those are the things people say about you. But what happens if those things turn out to not be enough? What if someone comes along who is just as smart, but without all the titles and accomplishments? What does that make you? I wanted to be angry. I wanted to argue. But the problem with Vale was that she saw too clearly, stripped away pretense too efficiently. I am not terrified, I said quietly. Okay. Then tomorrow. Should be easy. We just work together, combine your experience with my improvisation, and pass this exam. Simple. Nothing about this will be simple. Probably not, but it will be interesting. And honestly, I am tired of us sniping at each other in class. It is exhausting. Can we call a truce, at least for tomorrow? I looked at her across the table. Really looked at her. Not as a rival or an annoyance, but as a person. She looked tired. Dark circles under those shifting green eyes, shoulders slightly slumped, fingers tapping nervously on her coffee cup. She was scared too, I realized. Scared of failing. Scared of not belonging. scared of confirming every prejudice that humans did not deserve their place in the galactic community. We were not so different, her and I. Truce, I agreed, for tomorrow. Good enough. Now, let us plan how to not get destroyed by Academy instructors. We talked for 3 hours. She suggested aggressive maneuvers. I proposed defensive alternatives. I recommended established formations. She offered creative modifications. Slowly, painfully, we found a middle ground that incorporated both of our strengths. It was almost pleasant. Dawn came too quickly. We stood in the staging area with our assigned squad. 8 cadets who looked appropriately terrified at being thrown into a live combat exercise months ahead of schedule. The mission briefing was simple and horrifying. You will assault a fortified position currently held by 12 instructors and 20 advanced students. Your objective is to capture their command post within 3 hours. You have standard equipment, limited ammunition, and no support. Questions? Vale raised her hand. Rules of engagement? Non-lethal weapons only, but they will hurt. A lot. Medical teams standing by for injuries. Anything else? No? Begin. The first hour went exactly as I predicted. We probed their defenses, identified strong points, mapped their patrol patterns, standard reconnaissance. They are expecting a conventional assault, I said, studying our tactical displays. Front gates are too heavily defended. Side approaches have overlapping fields of fire. Back entrance is trapped. So we do not assault at all, Vale said. What do you propose? Teleportation? Something like that. Look at their patrol patterns. Every 17 minutes, there is a 40-second window where the Northwest Tower is unobserved. We cannot breach the walls, but we can get someone on top of them. One person cannot take a fortified position. One person can open a gate from the inside. I stared at the data. She was right. There was a window. Barely enough time, but enough. Who goes? I go. I am smaller, faster, and better at sneaking than anyone else here. It is suicide if you get caught. Then I will not get caught. While I am infiltrating, you lead a diversionary assault on the front gates. Make it loud. Make them think we are idiots. Every defender watching you is one less defender watching me. You want me to deliberately fail? I want you to deliberately distract. Can you do that? I looked at my squad. 8 terrified cadets waiting for orders. Yes, I said. I can be distracting. The diversionary assault was magnificent. I made every obvious mistake in the tactical handbook. Predictable approach patterns, inadequate suppression fire, poorly coordinated advance. The instructors must have thought we were genuinely incompetent, which was exactly the point. While they focused on repelling our clumsy attack, Lieutenant Vale became a ghost. I watched her on my tactical display, a single blip moving through blind spots with impossible precision. She reached the wall, climbed it during that 40-second window, disappeared inside. Then nothing. 5 minutes of nothing while we continued our theatrical failure of an assault. 10 minutes. My squad was taking heavy fire. 2 cadets were already down, tagged out by non-lethal rounds that left painful welts. 15 minutes. Had she been caught? Captured? Was this entire plan disaster? Then the gates opened. Not slowly, not carefully. They slammed open with hydraulic force, and Lieutenant Vale stood there grinning, covered in dust, and looking entirely too pleased with herself. "Surprise!" she said over the comms. "Now!" I shouted, abandoning our fake incompetence. My squad surged forward with actual tactical precision, pouring through the open gates before the defenders could reposition. What followed was chaos. Beautiful, effective chaos. The instructors had prepared for a conventional assault, not a sudden internal breach combined with external pressure. They fought well, these veterans and advanced students, but we had momentum and surprise. Vale and I moved through the compound like we had been fighting together for years. She would flank. I would suppress. I would draw fire. She would strike from unexpected angles. When I made tactical calls, she followed them. When she saw opportunities I missed, she took them without waiting for permission. We captured the command post in 2 hours and 43 minutes. Admiral Korvax was waiting there, looking disgustingly pleased with himself. Not bad, unconventional, risky, effective. Lieutenant Vale, that infiltration was impressive. Cadet Vex'thar, your diversionary assault was surprisingly convincing. Thank you, sir, I said, trying to catch my breath. Do not thank me yet. I am still deciding your final grades. But you passed, both of you. Now get out of here before I change my mind. We limped back to the barracks, exhausted and bruised. My scales ached from multiple impacts. Vale had a black eye forming and was favoring her left leg. That was insane, I said. That was fun, she corrected. We could have failed. Your infiltration could have gone wrong in a dozen ways. But it did not, and your distraction worked perfectly. Turns out, we make a decent team when you stop trying to prove you are smarter than everyone. I started to argue, then stopped. Because she was right. Again. When I had stopped worrying about being the smartest person in the room and just focused on accomplishing the mission, everything had worked better. I owe you an apology, I said slowly, for how I treated you, for underestimating you, for being, as you said, insufferable. You do not owe me anything. Well, maybe coffee, or whatever that terrible mineral thing you drink is. I tried to humiliate you, multiple times. I wanted you to fail. I know, but you did not actually want me dead or hurt. You just wanted me to acknowledge that you were better. That is not evil, Vex'thar. Just insecure. We are all insecure about something. What are you insecure about? She laughed. Everything. My species is barely out of the cradle compared to the rest of the galaxy. Every day I am here, I wonder if I earned my place or if I am just a political token. Every time I offer an idea, I worry that I sound stupid to people who have been doing this for centuries. So, I overcompensate by acting confident and dismissive. Same as you, just different packaging. We reached the barracks and stood there awkwardly. I am not good at genuine moments. My training taught me diplomacy and tactics, not how to actually connect with people. Thank you, I said finally, for today, for showing me that being smart does not mean everyone else is stupid. You are welcome, and thank you for proving that traditions exist for good reasons, even if they need updating sometimes. So, truce extended? No more class warfare? She stuck out her hand, that odd human gesture of agreement. I took it, noting how small her hand was compared to mine, how fragile humans seemed despite their surprising toughness. Truce extended, she agreed, but I am still going to challenge your ideas in class. And I will still question your unorthodox methods. Perfect. That is called collaboration, not conflict. She was right, as usual. Annoyingly right. But I was learning to be okay with that. As she walked away, Sella appeared beside me. So, did you learn your lesson? What lesson? That humility looks good on you. Better than arrogance, anyway. I was not arrogant. I was confident. You were terrified someone might be as good as you. Now you know someone is as good as you, just in different ways. How does it feel? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Relieving, actually. Like I do not have to prove anything anymore. Good, because Lieutenant Vale is headed this way again. She forgot something. I turned. Vale was indeed walking back, that slight limp still visible. "Hey, Vex'thar," she called. "Forgot to mention, Professor Thorne is assigning permanent project partners tomorrow. I may have requested you. Hope that is okay." "You requested me? After everything?" "Yeah, well, you are annoying and arrogant and insufferable, but you are also smart and capable. And you actually listen when you stop trying to win every argument. Plus, we work well together when we stop being idiots. So, partners?" I felt my scales shift to a lighter purple, the Zorvanian equivalent of a smile. "Partners? Cool. Try not to be too insufferable tomorrow, okay?" I will attempt to restrain myself. She grinned and walked away, leaving me standing there wondering how I had gone from trying to destroy her academically to being genuinely pleased about working with her. Sella's telepathic laughter echoed in my mind. "Growth is uncomfortable, is it not?" "Shut up." "Never." But she was right. Growth was uncomfortable and necessary. And maybe, just maybe, exactly what I needed. Lieutenant Kira Vale had not made me kneel in front of the class. She had done something far more effective. She had made me question every assumption I held about competence, about worth, about what it meant to be truly exceptional. And in doing so, she had made me better. I still did not like admitting when I was wrong, but I was learning, one uncomfortable lesson at a time.